Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
I'm BJ Sewura, an aspiring paranormal musician who plays live for the dead because the living just doesn't want to hear me.
The Dead of Winter Horror Network and Nick King from the 508 Productions invite you to endure the most terrifying immersive experience in all of podcasting. Beneath the Red Umbrella, now available wherever you listen to podcasts. Beneath the Red Umbrella, when the snow falls, the killing season begins.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our meta pals out there? In today's episode, we'll be jumping into the world of palm reading with special guest Leslie Zemenek. Leslie is a certified soul plan practitioner who works with palm reading, past lives, and numerology to help reveal your life purpose. Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is exciting. We have had it, and I'm sure you saw it on my post when I requested guests. We've always had an interest in palm reading, but we've never met someone who had that skill at least not that I'm aware of up until now. So that's exciting.
There actually aren't that many of us compared to, for instance, like tarot readers or astrologers. We're in a minority for sure.
It's a rare breed for sure. And it's interesting because you ask the Google about palm reading, and there's like a plethora of graphics. And yet to find someone who that's actually a skill set or a gift that they have, it's not easy.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Now, how long have you been a palm reader?
Almost 3 decades.
Ooh.
I started in the mid-90s.
Oh, wow. Now, in the mid-90s, we did not have YouTube, and I'm pretty sure Google wasn't as big. So for you, how did you learn to read palms?
I actually had a teacher. And one of the things my teacher said, and still says to this day, is you cannot learn to read hands from a book. And I believe him because I had my first tarot decks when I was a little kid. I, was interested in astrology. I had books and books and books on reading palms, and they never clicked. So I was at an event in California, and he had a booth. He has an institute, calls it International Institute of Hand Analysis, and I met him, and when he described what they did, I just had this moment, and I knew I had to study with him.
Was their institute local to California, or was it something you could do from other places as well?
You can do it from other places. It started in California. He has a branch in, I believe it's Switzerland. And he has, of course, certified many teachers who now live in different parts of the world. So there are teachers of his system everywhere. But again, not that easy to find. He's a brilliant man. I want to say they're not as good at marketing as they could be.
They're focused on their gifts.
That's true. It's true. He actually took old traditional palm reading and took it a step further. So what he taught and what I do actually is a combination of traditional palm reading along with sort of neuroscience-based looking at your brain. And that's because there's more nerve endings from your brain to your hands than any other part of your body. So the lines in your hands are actually connected to the way the brain is wired. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And I call myself a geek, a hand geek, and a brain geek and a fingerprint geek. And he added this element of reading the fingerprints on top of the lines in the hand. So, I mean, I just geek out on it. I can't help myself. The fingerprints are the piece that he developed for reading the life purpose. That's the one part of your hand that never changes. Your fingerprints are always the same, which is why we use it for ID. But the lines in your hands will continue to change. And I've been able to watch the hands of someone going through the early stages of dementia and watch their lines disappear.
Oh, jeez.
So, it is kind of interesting once you start to be able to observe the brain-hand connection. Pretty interesting.
Do the I've heard, I don't know much about it, but the lines on one hand change more than the other. Is that how that works? Or is it
No, because you have a left brain and a right brain. So, I mean, if you were really a left-brained person, then yeah, maybe those lines would be more tending to change because you spend so much time in your left brain. But we all have both sides of our brain. So, the hand correspondence is opposite. Your left hand to your right brain, your right hand to your left brain. So, some people's hands look the same, left and right. They look similar. And some people's hands look ridiculously different.
I feel like now I'm going to be staring at my hands this entire podcast like, oh.
Well, they're not going to change in front of your eyes. That much
Well, I
is
figure,
true.
but I'm just going to compare them like, huh.
Yeah, some people are very asymmetrical and some are really not.
right? I have heard, and I don't. Again, I don't know much about it, so you could help me. If your line like connects straight across, is that like a sign that you are gifted, or that you're like? I think I've heard that somewhere. I don't know if it's true.
Are you talking about the horizontal line across the center of your hand?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, that's your headline. And if it's really long and goes straight across your whole hand, it is considered a mark of giftedness in terms of how your brain works. It's the person who's an incredible problem solver. They need complex things to work on all the time. I've recently started saying that if you have a headline like that, you're like a border collie. Your brain needs a job. And if you don't give your brain a job, just like if you don't give your border collie a job, it gets into trouble. But it is a gift.
Okay.
There are actually, I think, 18 different markings in your hand that can show different types of giftedness.
Ooh. Is there one that you see more often than others with people?
I see that kind of headline a lot. I see the star under the ring finger, known as the Star of Apollo, a lot, which is the giftedness and creativity. I see there's like a crescent shape that goes around the heel of your hand, which is a wisdom line. It's incredible intuition. But, it's interesting because when I actually do know a lot of other people who do this because we keep in touch. We find each other. And when we compare notes, different readers attract different types of people. So the type of client I might attract will be different than another reader, and they may see certain gift markings more than I do. So a lot of it has to do with who the reader is and what kind of people they're inclined to help. So I work with a lot of creatives.
So when we talk about, or when you talk about palm reading, is it really, because it sounds like you mentioned something under the ring finger. Do you go all the way up through like the fingertips to read?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything. There is nothing on your hand that isn't relevant. So if you have a cut or a scar, it tells me something. If somebody stabbed you in the second grade and you have one of those blue dots from the pencil, it tells me something. How thick your fingers are, how long your fingers are. So it's not just lines, it's not just fingerprints, it's everything. How flexible is your thumb? How flexible are the rest of your fingers? Are your palms red? Do you have blue veins showing? Everything, everything, everything has something to say about your hands. It's pretty amazing stuff.
That's very, very interesting. There's So many. I have a lot of weird markings on my hands, or maybe they're not weird. I don't know. I have a straight line that goes to my middle finger. That's straight up and down.
Straight up and down, that would be your fate line, which is they call that your purpose over time. It's less about destiny and more about, like, if it's very, very, very straight from the middle of your hand at the bottom to the top, that shows somebody with a lot of integrity and takes their responsibility seriously.
Okay.
Now, I have the world's shortest lifeline.
Oh no.
So I like to tell people get really scared when you start to talk about lifelines. They think you're going to tell them they're going to die. And I have the world's shortest lifeline. So I like to say I'm the poster child for this. So it makes it easier for me to put people at ease that I'm not going to tell them something dire like that.
Right.
Because I just went on Medicare. So, I'm not dead.
Because you're not going like, so your lifeline's really short. It ends in 5, 4.
Well, but
not
you
counting
can do
down.
timing. You can do
Really?
timing on the lines, and if you did timing on my particular lifeline, it ends at around 35. So I'm far past that.
So you showed those lines who's boss.
I did. I love the way you put that. That's great. That's great.
So you mentioned that your teacher had taught you that what you learn is not going to be from a book. So then as you're developing the skill set of reading hands, and I don't want to say palms because it's the whole hand, reading
Right.
hands, is this an intuitive knowing that you're paired with? You're kind of tapping into intuition as you study these hands.
Yes. There's an underlying system, but like astrology, there's an underlying system, but the best astrologers also have an intuition. It's that ability to kind of put the story together instead of it reading like a Chinese menu. And the same thing happens with hands. Now, when I studied, we were told we had to go out and read 100 pairs of hands before we were allowed to charge money. And that was basically to get the practice and to kind of get it like the muscle memory, right? But since then, I've read thousands. I actually ink people's hands when they come to me. So we ink them, or sometimes if I'm doing long distance, I send them a packet so they can take ink prints themselves, and they scan them and send them back to me. And the reason we do that is so we can date them and you can track the changes. So I have in my collection several thousand ink prints. So those are just the people I inked, because there's people I sit down with like at events or things where I just spend 10 or 15 or 20 minutes with them. And I, pick out the highlights, but I have never inked them. So I've looked at a lot of hands, a lot of hands.
So when you're inking somebody, is that just, are you talking about like a tattoo, or is it just like a mark with like a
Like
pen?
fingerprinting, I think.
Is that,
No, I use, when you have you ever done block printing? Do you know what block printing is? They cut the linoleum block, and then you have a roller with this ink that you buy in the art store. I use that roller and that ink all over the hand. And I have one here. Oh, you're not going to be on video, but
That's okay.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And so I'm basically taking an imprint of the whole hand by inking the whole hand. This is actually the hardest thing we learned was inking the hands. It was harder than learning to read them. Because, I mean, if you have somebody with sweaty hands, the ink doesn't want to stay on. If somebody's been touching their skin, they have oils on their fingers, it doesn't want to stay on. So inking the hands is actually an art form in and of itself. It's, so I give a copy of these to my clients and they can watch for themselves, what's changing in their hands. It's pretty cool.
Is there anything special that you have to do, or not special? Let me walk that back. Is there anything specific that you do to prepare yourself to read people's hands? Like whether it's grounding or anything to protect yourself energetically?
Well, I do have to ground because, especially if I'm reading multiple people in a day, it does wear me out a little. It's more now than it used to, and I'm probably because I'm older. That's what I tell myself. Not as young as I used to be. But yes, I do. I have to ground. It's you're running energy and you're tapping into somebody just like doing any kind of intuitive reading. So yes, absolutely. And eat. It's important to eat in between. Not like while I'm doing it, but in between clients.
You're like, sorry, I got some chocolate on your hand. It's fine. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It helps, right? With the Cheetos fingers and
Yeah, right. No, it's important to have some protein and stay hydrated. I mean, just all the same.
Yeah. Do you ever accidentally like look at somebody's hand and then kind of read it just to yourself a little bit and go, oh, what's going on there?
No. And I'll tell you, I don't know about other people, but I have a very strong ethic around this. I do not believe in reading somebody without their permission. In my opinion, that's like going in their bathroom and opening their medicine cabinet and going through it. That's exactly how I think about it. I think it's
no, that makes
really,
sense.
really rude to walk up to somebody and read without their permission. It's invasive. I don't do it. I do know readers who do it, but I personally do not.
Consent is key.
Yes.
I think so. I think that's really, it's the right thing to do.
I mean, you're getting a person's story, right? I'm assuming you're getting past stories. Like it could be trauma, could be not. But you're getting their past, their present, and potentially their future. So to me, that's pretty personal. And I kind of compare it to, going up to a stranger and randomly like licking their cheek or something. Like that's very invasive. You don't do that without without permission. I was just trying to think of something invasive but appropriate, John Thomas. He's like shaking.
Say hi,
his
let me
head.
lick your cheek.
You don't even say hi. It's just like, whoop. That's to me like when people read others without getting consent or awareness. They're just like going about their merry way, and then here you go.
I'm going to do that to you and BJ next time I see you guys.
thank you.
Now, when I was younger, I did used to sometimes get stuff when I walked past. I mean, I remember being on the New York City subway platform and walking past this couple who was kissing, and I heard in my head, he's cheating on her, and I thought, do I need to know that?
Oh, no.
So I actually taught myself to turn it off when I wasn't on the job.
That's brutal.
Well, because that'll also exhaust you, right?
Yeah. I think that's we've talked about before in past episodes just how to turn off gifts, right? Or at least have them turned down a little bit and I think that's really hard for people, especially like empaths, right? Just that energy trying to stop it and block it. And for you it might be even harder because like you look at somebody's hands, it's you see what you see. It's like reading a book, right? You see what this says and whether or not you choose to I guess read the letters. I don't know. Is it kind of like
that? Kind of. But most people aren't putting their palms up towards you. I mean, if they're talking to you, they might talk with their hands. I might notice something like one particular finger longer than the other, but that isn't going to tell me a whole lot. And I'm really careful about not like looking hard at what's going on if their hands happen to be out. But I do love looking at Google image for the hands of famous people when they're waving at the camera.
Oh, interesting.
That's kind of fun.
Like, what are some interesting things that you've picked up from that? You don't have to say who, but just have you it's like, oh, I know that person's doing that.
Well, there's a particular line called the simian crease, and I know BJ was asking me before about the line across the middle of the hand, and usually when you fold your hand, you've got two horizontals, the heart line and the head line, but some people have a single crease across, And they call that the simian crease because that's what monkey hands look like. They have a single line. And there are humans that have this single line. And it is also is a gift. But it can also, before they actually cracked the code for DNA, if a baby was born with a single line, they would check it for genetic disorders. So there's some people who have it who have genetic disorders, and then there's some people who have it who have no genetic disorders, and they're considered to have this gift around. But it's literally a merging of head and heart. So there's some famous people who have this line. And like I can say, if you care, can I say one?
Sure.
Meghan Markle.
Oh, really?
She has one.
Huh.
And so it's people who have it feel misunderstood because they process very differently and communicate very differently than people who have normal head and heart lines. It's a type of genius, but they often feel very misunderstood, and they may go through a good part of life feeling like a weirdo or trying to hide certain things.
What is it called
So,
again?
The simian?
simian crease or the simian line, just like monkey, simian.
I always joke because I have like a pie shape on my hand, so I always joke like the mathematical pie. So I always joke that I was born to love pie, and you know that's a math joke for you, John. You just
Oh Lord.
I actually have a YouTube video on the simian crease, and
do you really?
I have other YouTube videos that have 0 views, but my simian crease video, which I did with another hand reader, the two of us did it together, has thousands of views because people who have this line are searching for information on why they feel like a weirdo.
So I feel like one, we need to get your other videos up from 0. So we're gonna work on that. You'll get at least 3, but 2.
All right.
I do love that, in the age of information, a lot of people say, social media is bad for us and all of those things. Whereas, yeah, it can be unhealthy mentally, just like anything else can. Too much of anything can be bad for you. However, I think the share of information is key, especially when you have something like that, right? Where people feel like they don't fit in or they're misunderstood. And it's like, hey, here's another way to approach that. Here's another reason why that you may be feeling that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really a mark of genius.
You hear that, our simian line friends?
Do you ever get any kind of readings from people just by shaking their hands?
No, because again, I don't have it turned on. I learned not to turn it on until I'm working. It's like asking somebody who cooks in a restaurant to cook you dinner.
Don't put it past me. You are a former chef, and I love food. So it's going up to the person and being like, you know what I love? I
Right.
love pasta dishes. So, but I imagine on the flip side of that, when people find out that you do hand reading, that you probably get a lot of unsolicited, hey, look at my hands.
I did early on. I don't so much anymore. Usually the first thing they ask me is how much do you charge for that?
Good. That's good.
Yeah, that is much better. But yeah, actually, back in the day when I still worked a day job, a lot of times people I would work with, they'd hear that and they'd go, put them out. They'd just put them out. It'd be really interesting, yeah, when it was my boss.
Yeah, you're like, so I just discovered all of this about you. It's a raise or I'm telling. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, that's funny.
Jokey. See, I would be on the bad side, apparently. Like you have your light workers and they're like, Ashley, you're deviating here.
Yeah. And then there's Ashley. Yep. Yep,
And
exactly.
then there's Ashley. Yeah, I'm pretty sure extortion would make me not so light. But we all got a raise.
Be an asshole for sure.
An asshole. So now, that was back when you first started. Now you incorporate additional modalities so that you can create a full life purpose plan with people. So how does that work?
So I think the hand reading is the most immediate because A, it's on your body. B, the fingerprints never change. You have a good overview. If I'm working with somebody for the first time, that's usually what I'll have them do. If they want to dive deeper into their past lives, like why am I this way? Why am I struggling with this particular thing? Why do I keep running into the same wall all the time? Then I move on to the past life astrology. There's a lot in there. If you read the chart a certain way, it pulls up the whole story. Like it might tell you that you were part of a ruling family where you didn't agree with the things they were doing, but because of societal expectations, you had to keep your mouth shut. So in this lifetime, you're having trouble with the communication piece or disagreeing with people and stepping. I mean, it's like great for like really uncovering the roots of what's going on. Also points out your gifts that you brought in, stuff that you developed in past lives that you don't have to work hard on this lifetime because you're already good at it. And then when people are really wanting to take things to the next level, that's when I work with the soul plan numerology because that's a really uplifting, spiritually oriented reading. It's like where you take it when you're ready to take it to the divine level, where you really want to step up. It's very inspirational. Everybody who's done that reading with me feels really uplifted when they're done. So I kind of like to do it in that order.
Now, forgive my ignorance,
Mm-hmm.
but for the numerology aspect, are the numbers being used? Is that from like the astrological chart, or where are those numbers being read from?
So the soul plan system is based on something from the Kabbalah, or you might call it the Kabbalah. Some people pronounce it that way. There is it's an ancient system they called gematria, where they took the letters, the Hebrew letters, and every one of them had a numerical value. And then as philosophers, they would take words and phrases that came to the same numerical number when they added the numbers up, and they would consider them to be related. So this is based on that system where it takes the numerological value to the letters of your name as it appeared on your birth certificate. The idea being that sound has energy. So the first time your name is spoken, it has energy of your purpose. And I wanted to study this because someone did one of those readings for me, and it completely jived with everything in my hands, everything in my chart, and gave me more information that I didn't already have. And I thought, okay, now I've got the perfect trifecta of life purpose systems. It's pretty cool. So it's not related to traditional numerology at all.
I don't know much about numerology in general, so that's why I was just like, could you walk me through it?
Yeah, it uses pairs of numbers instead of just a number.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have like 6 or 17 8 or 22 4 in different, and it has uses a star pattern, and the numbers are kind of on the star, and they tell you different things about yourself. It talks about your similar to the things I find in the fingerprint. The challenge you're born with, the talents you're born with, and the goal, what you came here to do, the purpose.
Oh, wow.
So very similar to what I see in the fingerprints. It's pretty cool.
Is that something that that's, I guess, how do I ask this? Is that something that you do with the numerology, or is it something that you can get from the hands as well, like learning about somebody's past lives?
That's the fingerprint part. So the fingerprints are complete at 16 weeks after you've been conceived. So 5 months before you're actually born, your fingerprints are complete the same way they're going to be for your entire life. And that's the same time your brain is developing. It's actually before your biological gender has been determined. That's how early it is. So we say that your soul is entering the body at that time, and so it records into the fingerprints the talents you're bringing with you from a previous life, the challenge you came into, or I like to refer to it as what your soul needs to learn in this lifetime for it to advance. Because it sounds better than challenge, right?
Yeah.
And because you say challenge and people go, oh God, why do I have to have a challenge? It's what you came to learn so your soul can advance. And also then the purpose, the goal, what are you going to do with all of that together? And that's the piece. So when I talk about people's hands, that's the nature part because it never changes, and the lines in the hands are the nurture. So nature and nurture.
So the lines in the hands, they're developed early. Is that you can read the past lives through that,
Well,
right?
that's the ridge patterns in the hands, the
Right.
fingerprints.
And then I guess my question would be, do they change from life to life?
I would imagine they do. Not having read somebody and knowingly read them again in a new life, I can't say for sure.
You're like, I recognize you. Hold on.
But actually, if people resist the work they came here to do, they could come back and repeat. I mean, they absolutely do come back and repeat. And, I personally went through a divorce at 60 and went, oh my God, I don't have a lot of time left on the planet. I don't want to come back and do this piece in my next life. So I decided I was going to work really, really hard on it because it was like, this is miserable. I'm not doing it again. But I don't know how many people consciously think about that when they think about, if they think about coming back and redoing it at all. Some people resist, and maybe they're hoping that the next time around it'll be easier, but it's not.
Yeah, I feel like people are becoming more and more receptive to the idea that we're here to learn lessons and grow from them or
Hmm.
repeat them. And so I would hope that by starting to, wake up to that, people are willing to put in that work so they don't have to repeat it. I feel like for me, I have a whole book that I came to learn. They're like, here is your checklist. And part of me
Yeah.
is like, all right, I'll do that one. Maybe we'll punt that to the next life.
I tell my clients, love your mistakes because they're there to teach you something. Learn to love them.
I'm trying to learn
They're
to laugh at mine. Like,
That's good too.
I'm just like, well, I did that.
That's good too. That's very healthy.
I think so. For people that maybe don't know about enough about like reincarnation or I guess soul contracts, is that something that, I mean, you're signing up for these life lessons, right?
Hmm.
And so when you do this, it's kind of for me it feels like a strange thing to when you live and go through life, you're not necessarily like, okay, here's your life lesson you need to learn, and then there's no like, I mean, there's clues obviously if you go see somebody like yourself, but like when people just, I mean, are they given hints? Is it something that, how do people find out what their soul contract is or why they even signed it?
Um, so, well, if you have asked earlier about the gift marking, the gift markings are all individual contracts, soul contracts. Those are pieces of individual pieces of soul contracts on top of the primary purpose. Um, People often discover their purpose. The more they work on themselves, the more the purpose gets revealed. So you don't have to come to somebody like me if you're working on yourself. It starts to get revealed. And people who've done multiple lifetimes working on themselves, they're really kind of get clued into knowing exactly what it is supposed to be. In terms of the lesson, the thing you came to learn, it's usually repeated multiple times. You feel like you keep running into the same one, and it may not look the same each time you run into it. It might have a slight variation, because I mean, then you can get good at it and then take it to a whole new level. So it doesn't mean that you get good at it and you're done. The universe will always give you the opportunity to get even better at it. So it definitely repeats. It definitely repeats. And so you start to go, okay, I keep running into this thing. There's something here for me, if you're that kind of person.
So I have an odd question, and it may come across like I'm being silly, but I'm not.
Fun.
We've had a lot of guests come on that talk about, people that are from other places, whether it be they're like a hybrid or a starseed, or, we have extraterrestrials that are amongst us. And so with like people potentially being some kind of hybrid, or there potentially being, extraterrestrials on Earth with us. Have you ever come across a hand or seen pictures of a hand? Like, I know you said you sometimes go on the Google images of something where you're like, that's different.
Once in a while. Well, yeah, yes, once in a while, I will say I do.
Yeah.
And I do believe that there are souls that come back um, once in a while who have completed their karmic go around, and they don't have to come back, but they choose to come back in a particular lifetime, either because someone they were in a lifetime with before needs their help, or the world is so effed up they feel like they have something they need to do. So I do believe there are souls that come in who, it was a choice. They came back for a reason. So they're not here for their own karma. They're here for doing other things. So yeah, I do occasionally see some oddball things and go, And I also see some hands where I feel like they're a catalyst. They may have some things that maybe weren't great, but they were a catalyst because they needed to set something in motion that's like historical, or that the world needs to deal with. So there are souls whose mission isn't exactly about improving themselves sometimes too,
They're almost like
which
an
is,
agent of change, even if that change is viewed as potentially negative. It's a change that's maybe necessary.
yeah, yeah. I don't see those people often. I don't know that those people sit down and have readings that often.
Fair.
So the people that come that you've read that you said that they've finished their lessons and they decided to come back. Do they know that in this lifetime, or are they just well put together people, or
I think I don't know that they're going to know it as children, but I think once they get past a certain age, they may start to get hints. Generally, people who are towards the end of their incarnation cycles, or in their last one, or came back because they're actually done but don't have to, but came back for a reason like I described, tend to be very humble and quiet. They're kind of doing the thing they came to do, but they're not beating their chest about it. They're not making a lot of noise. They tend to just do it in a very quiet way to do the work they need to do. And interestingly enough, a lot of those people tend to be artists, which I find fascinating, because artists, we don't often think, well, some of us think of them as people who change the world, but culturally, they're not always looked at as people who change the world. Some of us know better.
Oftentimes, artists aren't even really appreciated or acknowledged until they're long gone. So,
Yeah. Yes. Or but there have been periods in history where people have viewed them as a threat
This is true.
because they are.
Because they're free thinkers.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagination is a scary thing for people that want you to be a follower.
Hmm. Yes, those are my favorite people to work with. The ones who are here to usher in the future. They are my favorites.
But unfortunately, they're not the ones that have the power usually. Right?
I mean,
It
that's
depends on your
debatable.
definition of, yeah, it depends on your definition of power.
Well, controlling like nations sometimes I feel like a lot of the people, not all of them, just in some places it's just I don't know cuz you tend to see the beating chest and the arrogant nature of some, politicians for example.
Right.
Um
Yeah. Yeah.
so
I often look for those photos of them waving. Those are some of the people I tend to look up on Google Images.
You're like, show me your hands.
Right. Right. On one of my videos, I did one on famous hands, and I remember finding an image of Fidel Castro. And this finger, the index finger, the pointer finger, is the finger of leadership and power. And his index finger was the weirdest, longest finger. It looked like a rocket ship. I just thought, oh my goodness. Because he was a very, you know, I mean, I don't, without saying whether he did good or bad, but he certainly had a lot of people following him. I would imagine he was charismatic. And that leadership finger was just something to behold. It's just bizarre. It was bizarre. So that was a fun hand to come across on Google Images.
BJ, it's interesting you brought up the people of power and like artists not being people in power, because I think about it at face value and it's like, yeah, okay, people in power tend to be authoritarian and pretty loud. But if you dig deeper, you find that they're only in power as long as they can get people to follow them and believe them, because we see rulers overturned
Hmm.
throughout history quite often, especially the ones that are beating their chests and causing problems. At some point, the masses overthrow. Like we've seen it as far back as even tribes, right? Like where an entire village of elite gets burned down in the middle of the night and by the non-elite. And so, maybe that is something. Sorry, this got all weirdly political, but maybe that's something that in this age of awakening we're going through, we may start to uncover, is that we take our power back. And that can be found in the metaphysical too. People are embracing and acknowledging their gifts, they're taking their
Hmm.
power back. So,
Hmm. There's a lot of definitions of power, and I work with people in that with astrology too. You always look at the eighth house and Pluto, um, who some scientists have claimed is not a planet, but we astrologers know better.
poor Pluto.
Poor Pluto. Pluto's pretty powerful. I don't think anybody could truly demote Pluto.
but yeah, I agree. I think another form of power is like musicians, right? How many thousands of people go to their concerts,
Hmm.
or even just creative people that like filmmakers or people who make
Hmm.
TV shows, right? There's the people, millions of people give them their time, which is another form of power and to be creative, to tell stories, right?
And yes, storytelling is very powerful, and storytelling changes the world. So I never underestimate that as a power. Never.
Yeah, that's where it all started, right? Like after we had time to, if you believe in it, the hunter gatherers, right? Once we started, farming and everything, and we had time on our hands, just passed down stories and kind of evolved from there.
Yeah. Well, the writer Ursula Le Guin, there's a quote, and I may butcher it. It's probably not exact, but that's attributed to her, where she said there have been societies that have not used the wheel, but there has never been a society that didn't tell stories.
Oh, I like that.
That's awesome.
And to me, this is one of the things I love about reading hands. It's people's stories are in it. It's one of the things I love about reading charts. People's stories are in it. And when they know their stories, they can take their power.
Which I love because, we might see an inking of a hand and think, oh, a handprint. And you see an inking of a hand and you're like, look at this beautiful story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. Perspective, right? It's all about perspective.
Yes. Yes. And this is why I keep doing this, because I love being able to help people uncover their stories. The whole point of it is so that then you can write your happy ending.
Do you find that a lot of people are just so far from where they need to be when it comes to their stories, just getting to their purpose?
It's not my job to judge where they need to be.
Right.
This is actually, there's actually a gift marking for being a healer, and that's part of the contract, is that you don't decide what that healed state looks like. It's the person's job to heal themselves. You're just kind of facilitating them along the journey.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this idea of need to be, a lot of people hold themselves to a standard that they created in their mind of like where they should be at a certain stage in their life, right? Or they need to be at a certain age within their life. And how liberating it would be to just think, in a moment, just pause and say, I'm exactly where I need to be. Because if I needed to be anywhere else, I'd be there. So if we're stuck in this state of continuing the same mistakes and the same patterns, then it's like, okay, well, I haven't learned my lesson yet, and I'm still going to keep getting this until I learn. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we talked about, mistakes, right? And laughing at them or embracing them or loving them is part of that. I feel like is just a journey of accepting that I'm exactly where I need to be until I'm ready for the next part.
And those need to be's and should be's and have to be's, to me, most of those are culturally decided. And if you think about each person as being completely unique and their journey being completely unique, you don't compare yourself to where somebody else is or should be or needs to be or is going. It's just about you. It's your journey. It's not anybody else's. And that's the important thing too for people, because that helps them feel better about themselves. The minute you instill a should be or a need to be, then there's a way that where you can go. It creates a self-critique and self-worth issues and all kinds of stuff that stops you from going forward.
Right.
So,
Like you have to be married at this age, you have to have kids at this age. Maybe that's not what it's about for you. Maybe it's not this lifetime. Maybe that was the past life. Maybe it's the next one. Right. And I feel like, yeah, a lot of people go through that because of, unfortunately, sometimes family, right? Family will tell you that, these are what we need to do, what you need to be doing. And you're like, well, that just doesn't feel right. Like, you
right.
got to listen to yourself, right? That intuition, that, what is your inside telling you?
Some of the people who I work with who have the hardest time with their karma are ones whose family members were family members in previous lifetimes. They usually are like, oh, really?
You're like, if I could just clip that soul traveling buddy, we'd be good.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
That's
Yep.
really funny.
Yep.
Just
They have
thinking
a
of it.
hard time with it.
Right. I think of annoying family members, and it's like, again, like you again, like really.
Ugh. Like last life you were my dad, now you're my cousin. Just if we could get to further extended.
Right. Right. Yep. Usually it's a sibling.
I do think people are interesting too, because we get so pressured down by the cultural influence and societal influence of where we should be or need to be and expectations. And we misdirect oftentimes because we feel inadequate to those standards. We turn it around and apply it to other people because
Mm-hmm.
it's, misdirection. I don't have to focus on my work if I'm looking and judging these people.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. I see that a lot.
Now, you did mention about the names and the, numerology and energy that comes with names. And I'm really curious about that. I like it. My brain keeps chewing on it in the back of my mind as we're talking, because all I can think about is vibrations and humans being really similar to tuning forks. And so I'm wondering, like, when we're given names and those names have those vibrations, do we kind of start tuning fork vibrating to that name? And as we continue to use it, our vibration stays with that.
Yes, but again, with all of these systems, the whole idea is growth. So you have those vibrations, and those vibrations stick with you. But I think there's also in this system, because people change their names, right? They change, their names change. Sometimes people's names don't change, but most people at some point, like they. Okay, I'm gonna take that back. Not most people, but a lot of people change their names. I changed the spelling of mine because nobody could pronounce it, because it had a bunch of unpronounceable letters because it's Ukrainian. And I was like tired of people butchering it, so I made it phonetic. So that changed my numbers.
Mm.
So they have something called an overlay. So if someone changes their name, they you can do an additional reading, which then changes the vibration. So and you can choose to change your name to change the vibration. And this system can be used for naming babies, and it can be used for naming businesses.
Ooh.
So if somebody's considering naming a business, you can run the numbers and say, here's a challenge here with this one. This one's better. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that way.
What about people that don't identify with certain parts of like their birth name? So it's like, yes, I still carry this part of my name legally, but I
Mm-hmm.
really don't identify with it. Like,
Oh,
how does that work?
well, it's still going to have an influence if it was on your birth certificate. Like, I was given a middle name. My parents were made to give me a middle name because of the church
Hmm.
that they were in. And I always hated it. So when I changed the spelling of my last name, I ditched my middle name. And of course, that changed the vibration as well. So, but, even if you don't like it, there may be a reason from the vibration of it that you don't like it, that you don't even know about until you have one of these readings.
I love how things evolve over time, right? Even something that some people might consider very old school and antiquated, like palm reading, because all they've seen is stuff in the movies. And, it's
Mm-hmm.
usually associated with like traveling carnivals. And so, because that's pop culture, uh,
Right.
we see, just like anything else, palm reading has evolved into something
Right.
that incorporates science. You've got the
Mm-hmm.
neurological aspects, and it's all, and not that the line reading isn't, not science. It's just, there is hard science being married in with this. And I love that it's
Mm-hmm.
a hybrid, because for me, I feel like there is so much science in gifts. People just haven't taken the time to figure out what is that hard science behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even at things like astrology, the original astronomers were the astrologers. We wouldn't know about half the planets if it weren't for astrologers.
Mhm.
They were the ones who discovered this way back, if you read the history of it.
So for you, when did you first realize that you had gifts, that you were able to read energy? Was it in California when you met your palm reader teacher, or was it before that?
Oh no, I was tiny. So I don't remember. I don't think I was maybe even in kindergarten yet. My dad's mom was an housebound invalid in another city, and we would visit her once a week and have to climb up like 4 sets of stairs in this old brownstone. And she lived on the top floor, never left. And the day she died, I saw her in my kitchen, in my family's kitchen, but nobody knew she was dead yet. So it wasn't really her, it was her spirit. And then my dad found out like a couple hours later that she had passed. So I had experiences like this from the time I was tiny. And I honestly thought that if I told anybody that they would lock me up in a mental institution. So I kept it to myself.
When you started embracing your gifts, palm reading and numerology and astrology and all of the different metaphysical gifts, was your family supportive?
At that point, everybody was dead.
Oh, okay. Do you have a solid support network now?
Oh, yeah. Actually, yeah. When I started meeting other people who did this, I suddenly felt like, oh, I could take a deep breath. And actually, I remember going to must have been in California. It was a school that was teaching people the psychic arts, and they were having graduation, and you could pay $10 and sit down with 3 of the graduates and get a little mini reading. So I went in and paid my $10, and I remember sitting with one of them, and she looked at me, she goes, "You're one." And I went, "One what?" And she said, "A psychic." And I looked at her and went, "No, I'm not." But shortly after that, I went, "Oh, she was right."
One of us.
Did you want to deny that, or were you just like, was it something you were scared of?
No, I just didn't think I was. I guess I had not. I had kind of put it in a box because, like I said, I had worried that somebody might lock me up. Um, and you can kind of shut it down like anything. So I had shut it down for a while, but I hadn't thought about it for a while. And then once I embraced it, my life completely changed. It was great. It was great.
Do you find the more you work with your gifts and the more you've embraced your gifts that the paranormal activity or sensitivity has gone up?
Oh yeah. I I I don't know if I want to say that it's recent. That's been that way for a while. I mean, I've just been living my life this way for a long time. I moved not long ago from the city to the rainforest here in Washington.
Oh, wow.
And I have conversations with the critters all the time. And I said to my partner recently, I said, "Did you think that those conversations I was having were one way?"
I love that.
It's just how it is. I don't even think about it.
Do you get any kind of like special messages or anything that like creatures from the forest, they are like, I really wish you would spread this message?
I can't say I have necessarily. Um, it's more kind of immediate stuff. I don't think I've gotten like some big thing. I don't think that that's my role. This is a big channel for some message
Just
from
communication.
another spirit. I did have a walk-in once on the full moon.
What do you mean?
A spirit. I was driving home from work, um, and traffic was stopped, and it turned out that it was stopped because there had been a fatal accident on the highway. And it was the full moon, and I was on my way to a full moon ritual, which I was going to be late for. And apparently quite open because I was thinking about that. And just as I drove past the car, I felt something go on my chest. And I went, "Oh, shit." I knew exactly what had happened. And luckily, I was going to that full moon ritual with a bunch of people who knew what to do about it.
So it just kind of attached itself to you, or it went all the way in?
Well, when it had been traumatically thrown out of its body,
Hmm.
it didn't know what to do. And it looked at me and went, "Oh, you know what's going on." Oh.
Oh no.
And I didn't panic. I just went, "Okay, just drive carefully the rest of the way home. It'll be fine." I mean, I knew that we could do something about it. I wasn't worried that I was stuck with it.
That's scary though.
It's less scary when you know. It's scary if you were never experienced dealing with spirits. I um I actually throw dinner parties for the dead from time to time.
What? That's awesome.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, because most cultures other than Western cultures feed their dead. And I remember I've actually gone to cemeteries looking to see for graves with foreign names, and sometimes you find food left for them. And so there's this ritual where you cook the favorite food of your beloved dead. And there's a lot of setup to it so that it's safe and you don't have weird spirits coming in. But well, and you invite your beloved dead, and it's usually a potluck dinner, so everybody's bringing in. You have two plates. You make a plate for yourself and a plate for your beloved dead. And then we ring a bell and you eat in silence and only speak to your beloved dead. It's
Wow.
pretty amazing. So I do stuff other than palm reading.
That's amazing. Is it similar to like Dia de los Muertos, so where you don't eat the food that you set out for them, that has to be properly disposed of in a sacred
Yeah.
way? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's not scary when you work with them.
I think it's just for people who have no experience or aren't in tune with any kind of their gifts, or they watch ghost shows because
Yes, I agree.
they don't have any other way to do it, and they're like, oh,
Right.
there's somebody's making noises, it's a ghost.
Right. Well, I don't actually believe that they can hurt you the way they do in the movies. So yeah. So anyway, I started. This started because you asked me when did I first learn about my gifts, and so yeah, I did learn pretty early, and then I shut them down for a while, and then I went, oh yeah, that stuff.
Oh yeah, that stuff. And now you help people as a soul plan guide, and
Mm-hmm.
you incorporate palm reading and numerology. And so for those listeners and anybody that finds their way to this episode that want to reach out to you, where can they find out more about you?
So I have a website, which is my name, lesliezemenek.com. I don't know if you want me to spell that or.
That's okay. We'll post it with the episode as well.
Okay. And there's a lot about me there. I have an Instagram, which I'm kind of inconsistent on, but it's a pretty good one. And I just call it Life Purpose Guide. But if you looked up my name, you'd find me that way too.
Now, you mentioned videos. Do you also
Oh,
have
yes.
YouTube, or are the videos on Instagram?
The YouTube's is called Hand Readers Guild.
Okay.
And it's me and another hand reader. And I think there's about 20 something of them up. And they're all different themes. Like there's one on the Simian Crease. There's one on heart lines. There's, different ones. One on communication things. Anything about communication in your hands. We have different themes. They're kind of fun. We laugh a lot. They're unedited.
As it should be. Unfiltered,
Yes.
unedited.
Mhm. Yep. Au natural.
All right, fellas, do we have any final questions or any final thoughts for Leslie before we wrap this awesome episode up?
I just wanted to say thanks for coming on. It was really, really fascinating. Just there's so many things that I didn't know. coming into this, and I feel like it's just opening up more questions, right? Like there's just a bigger world that I had no idea about, and now I'm gonna start doing some research and looking at my hands a little bit more, and learning more about myself in that way, because it's such a big thing that people don't know about.
Cool. And, if you come across something and you want to ask me a question, I'm open.
Awesome, appreciate that.
Yeah, I completely appreciate you coming on. This time has flown by, and I feel like we barely just so much is on this topic. We barely scratched the surface, and would love to have you on again if you're interested after we watch a lot of your videos.
Okay, all right.
I'm sure we'll have more questions.
Maybe.
This has been super awesome. Do you have any final thoughts, Leslie, before we close it out?
Nope. I think I'm good.
All right.
I think I'm good.
All right, John Thomas, you want to bring us home?
Yes, ma'am. Ha! I called you ma'am. You're younger than me. Just kidding. No. In all honesty, again, thank you, Leslie, for coming on. Like BJ said, learning so much, and can't wait to watch the videos. And this episode will definitely reach who it needs to reach, I'm sure. So, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I'm BJ Seura.
If you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 300podcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss amazing guests like Miss Leslie here.
Also, don't forget to check out 3hauntedpodcast.com, where you'll find all of our past and current season episodes, as well as guest information and all kinds of awesome merch.
Until next time.